Thank you for your support and purchase. Throughout the next series of the videos we will cover all the documentation. In case of any further issues, please email me or find me on the Discord. I'm going to assume that you have purchased the plugin and installed it through the Epic Games Launcher. Now you find the location on your computer where it's downloaded. For example, in the C program files, Epic Games, and whatever Unreal Engine version you are using, somewhere in the marketplace plugins. Then you have created an project where you want to test it. So for this example is named test project. Inside of that project we create a folder plugins, and we will copy the MAS folder into the plugin. Once the folder is copied, we go up, right click, and we choose Generate Visual Studio Files. We will then double click on the test Visual Studio Launcher. So you should be able to see something similar. This is the name of our project, and within the plugins we have all the C++ classes. It is using following dependencies. So now when you just press Ctrl B and Ctrl Alt O, you should be able to build it. So there should be no errors once the build completes. Just press Ctrl F5. So once you press Ctrl F5, it will automatically launch. If that doesn't happen, maybe you have to right click here and set a startup project. So I get this update project warning because I've been already messing with it. It's on the internal memory, but there are first things that you need to do. That's in Edit, Project Settings, Maps and Modes, Editor Startup Map, map underscore AMS underscore indoor. Very important to fill in games instance class. And default game mode BP underscore GM. So make sure in your settings you can see the show plugin content and show engine content. If you expand the plugin content, you will find maps folder. Highlight it and drag it into a prepared maps folder and make sure you use copy. Now you can press save all and you can do these settings in the maps and modes to fill it in. As a marketplace developer, we are not allowed to ship maps with pre-computed lighting on true. So that's the first thing to do. Search for no pre-computed lighting. Make it to true. Save all and do it for all the maps. Again, project settings, viewport, class, at least common game viewport or your custom subclass of a common game viewport. Restart later. We can already set up the packaging, so make sure to expand to advanced. And if you scroll down, list of maps to include. Make sure to add 3 maps. build configuration shipping. That should do. Go down to engine, collision, and set up custom trace channel. And somewhere here in rendering around this section, I have changed some settings. So now I will have to restart the editor and the project. So within the plugin content, you should find all the blueprints. Every single C++ class has a blueprint counterpart. So mostly these data files are used for async load. We have just some legacy camshakes. Then the interesting parts are the minerals. The way I have done the destruction is the destructible meshes will be spawned just before the destruction, because I don't want them lingering in the level. I have no idea how much of a performance hit that will be, but I can only imagine it's not gonna be cheap. Now there is a basic example first-person character with basic anim blueprint that you can access through here, that has a standard aim offset. It's kind of old school setup, very simple, just running through the booleans. And if we would look on the anim graph, like kind of mostly just we are switching on the bools and switching on the enums. I mean, you can scroll through it to see how it's done. The crouching montages are just run through the very simple setup with the layer blend per bone. I mean, obviously you can improve this anim blueprint, but this kind of stuff is more to showcase the connections. So the inventory systems that you will find within the UI stuff, that's all kind of very basic, just to be able to test things. Main idea here is that we are running code through custom game instance class, and we are storing data in a custom subclass of a save game, and we are running the communication on the widgets through the player controller, with the exception of two widgets that are inside of the BPMAS gun. I thought it will make sense to put those two widgets that are related to the screen and the display, to put it through that C++ class. You can always change it. Another very important class is this spawn manager. You don't have to drag it into the level. It's kind of our place where we run a lot of code. And the key here to understand is that whatever changes you make, you won't see those changes because of how the system was set up, unless you simulate a first campaign load. So when you press num, for example, you press Alt P and start, and then if we read through the output log, if you press on the numpad 1, so now this variable was set true. If we exit and we start again, this is the kind of correct stuff in the output log that you should get, that every item was assigned unique ID. If we exit again and we clear the log and run the code again, now based on the location, we automatically recognize the actors that were already processed previously during the first campaign load, and we have reassigned the unique IDs, which are the F strings, to the actor. And this way we can control the spawning wherever we need to, and it's independent from the level. So for example, if I pick up a battery and the cartridge, now let's say I pick up another battery and I pick up another cartridge. So now in the inventory, it's the very basic inventory just to allow us to simulate things and test things. So we can start the first mining attempt. You can't be too far or too close. There is this terrible lag in the editor during a first explosion. It's not in the package build. I will demonstrate that on the video. So I will try to package project to see if it's good as it should be. Package test 5.5. And instantly goes into unknown error. I just completed packaging in 5.5. Everything works fine. I have done testing in the version 5.4, so in case you will run in some issues, try to set up a fresh project. Worst case scenario, I can always pass you a link to a zipped project file that is empty and will package successfully in the version 5.5. So I will run again through the project packaging settings. This is my 5.4 project updated to 5.5, and the packaging worked without any issues. So perhaps there is some setting that is slightly different. And also I want to say the promo video for the product overview was recorded in the package build. So the FPS was while running OBS Studio and in the shipping build. So I'm back in the indoor map. I had some weird issues with the textures. Basically, I recommend building the maps after you change the force pre-computed lighting to true. That created some weird issues in the 5.5 version with suddenly my handle going white. All I did was click on the corresponding textures and the textures loaded correctly and the problem went away. And also to clarify, there is no BP version of the MAS save game, because I was pointing a cursor here. That's just an MAS game state. At the end, I'm not really using it too much. The important part of the code is moved to the game mode, which really I think is the sweet spot for it. So every time we travel to a new level or load a new level, I add a 1 second delay. There is a command not to make it shorter, because the way it was designed, that the inventory widget will initialize itself, that inventory widget code has to run before this. And our main function, which is handling all the work, will redirect us to the spawn manager. So this will bring us to the spawn manager, to the big function. So you can see it's a huge function. There is a reason why I did it like I did it, because I had some issues with garbage collection messing up with stuff during the function. This function can take some time. I will demonstrate it later. But this is just for your understanding that everything that happens once we travel from the level or load a new level comes through this spawn manager process spawn data function. So as a rule of thumb, all the important settings in any class, or same for the widget, is if you type in settings, you will be able to see lots of options. Just try to hover the cursor to get some idea what it is. If you really want to understand it, then the best way is to go to C++ code and use F12 or Ctrl-Shift-F to find all and have a look how it's used throughout the code. Mostly in these main widgets or stuff that runs on the tick, I have already established some communication between the classes at the begin play. You should be able to find those variables and see how it was done, so you can reverse engineer it for yourself. There are some debugs, and it's all commented that here we are just simulating, for example, with the numpad 1, the first campaign load, because you would normally trigger this from some menu widget that would be a default level to start. In our example, I'm not dealing with that, and also if you can see when we start there is a delay, but the gun is already in the hand. So I'm not dealing with these extra visuals where you would have to spawn and wait a few seconds before you allow to equip the gun. Stuff like that. When we will travel to next level, we want to see the spawning. There is a lot of comments on the wall. I strongly encourage you to read it, and I encourage you to go through all the documentation videos, at least put it in the background and try to listen to the sound while you keep working on your stuff, to avoid unnecessary requests to the developer for stuff that's already explained in the videos. There is also a custom subclass of the blueprint function library with some very handy functions that we repeatedly use. So maybe have a look on those and either decide if you have to integrate them with your stuff, with the bigger blueprint function libraries in the project. I want to highlight the rule of thumb I'm using in the structure of the C++ code. It will always start with the public section of functions. Then after public section of functions, there would be public sections of variables. As we scroll down, and it's all alphabetically ordered. I always put a new section, so when I'm looking for something, I like to have it alphabetically ordered in the .h file. Once the public section ends, there is a protected section start with the variables. Then once I go down again, they are always alphabetically ordered, so when you are looking for float, you always know which way to scroll. I kind of like a bigger monolithic style of classes. At least I know when I use Control F, I'm gonna find it here. As we come down to the end section of the protected, then normally I would start with the protected overrides from Unreal Engine overrides, and then after that I would start with again alphabetically ordered protected section. If I use blueprint implementable event, I will always put a prefix of BI. Same will go for blueprint native, but I don't think I was doing this in this plugin, but maybe I should have done the BN prefix, but I don't think I have done that. And then obviously as again alphabetically ordered, and once I get down to protected section ends and the private starts, now within the .cpp file it's kind of messy because yeah, I keep shifting stuff between protected and public. But for example, another rule of thumb, if you just use Alt G to cross to CPP file, then any local variables, I tend to put a prefix of temp. Let me find such an example somewhere. For example, within the function, if I declare local variable, I always use prefix temp, because then when you read the function, it's very easy for the eye to get used to it, and you never get confused what's a local variable and what's actual permanent variable. I also like these brackets, curly brackets, to be in lines. I really hate the style when the bracket goes past this if statement. And I always use this macro, because this way I only delete this part maybe once or twice. For example, in the main classes like player controller or like game instance, and that way I could take that little information into a custom output log in a shipping build. If needed, at least it will tell me something is terribly wrong. Another rule of thumb, I try to use start something timer and clear something timer. In the bigger classes where I use a lot of timers, I already declared these variables in the very beginning, because yeah, it will save you the annoyance of typing the longer code. I hope this will clarify the structure of C++, and it will help you to navigate and read through the code.